Going down?
Going up, up.
Russell. Oh,
Jesus.
Get the picture?
Show him. Get the picture. He'll see it. I mean, just indicate it with your eyes.
Picture?
Now, take your time. Now, really nail him. This is the most honest thing you're going to do.
So far, the money was raised by my father in an extraordinary way, and we had already spent millions between Puzo, the writers, between Hamilton, between the living expenses, the Cannes Film Festivals. I mean, all that, added up. When Marlon Brando accepted, then we started the whole Italian adventure with Guy Hamilton, because we were building sets and stuff in Cinecittà, which is the biggest studio there that actually was built, I think, by Dino De Laurentiis.
We decided to make the film in Rome. There were a couple of reasons for that. First of all, Cinecittà is a big studio. It can accommodate that kind of big film. Secondly, Guy Hamilton had just entered a status in England where he was becoming non-resident, and therefore he was not allowed to spend more than 60 days in the UK.
Then, when we're moving there, suddenly, bingo, lawsuit from the government against Marlon and Bertolucci because of The Last Tango in Paris, which they considered indecent. Marlon, of course, said, I'm not going to Rome. Are you crazy? And then, I don't know how it came up. People started saying, England, the pound is very low, meaning the dollar is very strong, and also it is a desert. Nothing is going on. And then, of course, Guy Hamilton said, oh, but I have a tax problem because they're 99% bracket taxes. And, of course, Marlon or Guy. And so, of course, logically, we went with Marlon. Very sad. We parted, and then, of course, we had to find a new director. And the other candidate was mentioned by my first ex-wife, Sky Aubrey. She said to me, look, I know this guy, and he's terrific, Dick Donner, he's a funny guy, and he looks like Clark Kent. And I said, yeah, well, what has he done? He said, well, The Omen.
I was on the John, the phone rings, and this funny little voice says, this is Alexander SALKIND, you know who I am? I said, no. He said, what do you mean you don't know who I am? I said, no, I don't know who you are. What are you selling? He said, I'm not selling anything. I'm a very famous producer. I said, good, congratulations. This is Sunday. What do you want? He said, we're making the movie Superman, and I want to know if you want to direct. He said, I'll give you $1 million. I said, well, give me some information. So there was this little card I had in the bathroom, and I wrote on the back of it, Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, 2 movies at the same time. So they sent the script over, and the guy delivering it got a hernia. It was like that big, and had all this goofy, silly stuff like Superman flying down and tapping Telly Savalas on the shoulder. He turns around and he says, who do you love, baby?
The camp was absolutely not intended. That was the Newmans and Benton having fun. There was a scene where Lex Luthor was eating Kleenexes all the time. That was gonna go in a minute.
I called my dear friend Tom Mankiewicz, who was a friend and a wonderful writer. I said, I want to talk to you. He drove over to my house.
So I drove over there, rang the doorbell, no answer, went around the side of the house, and there's Dick on the lawn, dressed in the Superman suit.
And I came running across the lawn with a cape on, and Tom said, whatever you're in, I'm on. That's it. Or whatever you're on, I'm in.
And he said to me, put it on. Just put the suit on. If you put the suit on, you'll do it. You feel different with the suit on. I started laughing, and we sat down and started talking, and he sucked me in, and off we went.
Honest to God, I mean, the idea of those guys making Superman the way they were going to do it, I had decided, and I talked Tom into it, that we've got to do this. This is American tradition, and we had to keep the history and the purity of the piece, what Siegel and Schuster originally started out to do. And that they treated him as a reality, and that's where my verisimilitude came in for every department in the making of the picture, that they had to find this reality whatever it was, and they had to stay within it. So I took the picture, really because I felt this stupid necessity to keep Superman clean. I went into a discussion with the SALKIND. It was one of the most bizarre meetings I've ever had. It was in this really beautiful apartment in Paris. Mr. SALKIND, who I don't think made 5 feet, whether he was really sick or what, or he was just taking advantage of my sympathy, he was in bed for this whole conversation. And we got into these terrible arguments. If I was going to do it, I had to do it what I and Tom thought was the right way.
Dick was the one who said to me, you know, if we can make the love story work, the rest of the picture's going to fall into place. And it really became what Dick would call 2 kids on a date. I remember intentionally writing the last line in that balcony scene. Superman looks down at her and he says,
Peter Pan flew with children, Lois, in a fairy tale.
well, the implication being obviously this is real. This is not a fairy tale.
I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree whose branches wide and strong. The Camptown ladies sing this song. Doo-dah, doo-dah.
I had a shooting date of Brando. I called Jay Cantor. Jay was Brando's agent, and I said, I'm going to see him. Give me some hints. What do I do? How do I handle him? He said, well, that's interesting. He wants to play it like a green suitcase. I said, look, I studied a little method and everything. I don't understand the green suitcase. Looked at. He said, if he can convince you that he's a green suitcase, you will photograph a green suitcase, he will stay home, and he'll do his voiceover. That's where he is. He's very smart. So we fly to L.A., and we go up to Brando's house, and it was Tom Mankiewicz, ILYA SALKIND, and myself.
And then he went on a long conversation on, you know, the Indians, and I'm building things in Tahiti, and I'm definitely going to do a certain research about the ecology. I mean, he was really acting and doing things, and of course it was fascinating, but he wasn't talking about the film.
About 2 hours later, he said, look, this isn't why you're here. What can I do for you? What do you want to talk about? I said, well, I'd love to talk about the character. He said, yeah. I was prepared. He said, I thought maybe I should play it like I'm waiting, green suitcase. He says, a bagel. I said, I beg your pardon? I have him ready for green suitcase, but no bagel. He said, like a bagel. I said, it's different. What do you mean? He said, well, who's to say what Krypton's like? Who's to say what? Maybe the people look like bagels up there. But I'm smart enough to know what humans look like, so I make my child in the form of a human so I can send him to Earth, but I'll be a bagel. Tom's looking at me like, we're and Ilya's going, good idea.
I mean, I said, this is it. I mean, I'm gone. I'm gonna go in Brazil and hide. The film will blow. This is it. This man is completely nuts. I was completely petrified.
And then he says, and maybe we don't actually speak. We just make electronic sounds with subtitles.
I said, you know, Marlon, there isn't a kid from 6 to my age that doesn't know what Jor-El looks like. He said, what do you mean? I said, the comic book's around since '39. He says, I talk too much, don't I? I said, well, you could go on. He said, but I talked myself into what you're here for. I said, kind of. He said, okay, show me what I look like. I showed him, and from there on in, he was a doll.
With Marlon there at the beginning, it was key because he was incredibly funny. On the first day, I came onto the set, and then he said, have you read this? I said, yeah. I said, haven't you read it, Marlon? No, I haven't read it. I said, Marlon, why haven't you read it? Well, it might be crap, and I need the money, so I haven't read it.
He came up to me the first day and he said, hey, Mank. He said, I just read the whole script for the first time. I said, really? He said, this film's a bleeping Valentine. And that was such a morale booster for us because it was in his contract that no press was allowed on the set. when he was there, and within about 5 days, he was inviting people from Newsweek, talking about the film, telling them how terrific it was going to be. He was really wonderful.
The way I see it, it's a banner headline, front page, with maybe one picture.
There's only one P in rapist. Lois Lane, say hello to Clark Kent. Told you one P.
Casting a picture, you have to be sure that the person that you cast can deliver on the creative conceit that the picture promises. And they already had enough firepower with Brando and Hackman. They already had enough legitimacy with the writer and director that they didn't need to put a big star in the very lead role. What it did was free them up to be inventive in that role. And this is exactly what the picture needed.
Just think back in those days, there were no true opticals. There was no pure animation, and I had to make a man fly. And if you convinced the audience a man could fly, it would be tough enough. You couldn't have a known actor because that would just jump through the canvas. It was Robert Redford or Paul Newman flying. So I really made it an issue that if we were going to do it, it had to be an unknown.
When Donner and the SALKINDs called me in and brought me up to date on where they had explored and that they didn't have the ideal answer yet, and that they were willing to go with an unknown, I don't know, it was like a bolt of lightning. I said to myself, Christopher Reeve.
I looked at him, kind of reddish blonde hair and skinny as can be, but he had this great big sweater on. And he really convinced me of his honesty, of his love of the character and how he wanted to play it. And I said, but I got it. You're a skinny little kid. And he said, listen, before I went into acting, I was a real jock. He said, I've lost 50 pounds. He said, I can put it on. I said, hey, if I take a chance on you, you'd better be telling me the truth or I'm down to 2. He said, I swear to you. I said, well, I'll have to do a test. He said, well, I'm in a play right now down the village. He said, I play my own grandfather in it. And so we went to the theater that night, and there were maybe 20 people in the cast, and he just jumped off the stage. He came right through the proscenium. He stood out. He stood out in life, everything Chris did. It's hard to talk about Chris because he was really a very special kid and one of the great tragedies.
I get a call from Dick Donner, and he said, can you get down to the studios as quick as you can? And we've got Superman, you see. So I chased down to the studios, and he said, we've got this guy called Christopher Reeve. And I said, what's he like? He said, well, he's 6'5", and he weighs currently about 170 pounds. And he said, he's actually perfectly right facially. He said, we'd very much like you to build him up for us. So he said, we'd like you to look after him for the next 6 weeks and put as much weight on him as you possibly can, in the right places, of course. And that's kind of, I'm introduced to Chris. I mean, he was fantastic. He was lovely. I mean, he was a really lovely person. You know, we were like brothers. I mean, we got on so well together. And during the course of the period that I had him, I took him from 170 pounds when we started, and he was 212, actually, when he went into a suit.
Chris was perfect casting for Superman, because Chris was a pretty straight-arrow guy with a very strong sense of good New England morality. I mean, he really, really did have, which was one of the things I loved about him, a strong sense of right and wrong, of what's decent and done and what's not done and what's cruel. And he was a very good person. I mean, he was a deeply honorable guy.
The audiences would look at Christopher and think, that's a good guy. And he will do what he can to make things work, to make good things happen. So you felt that about him. He was just brilliant casting.
Chris and I actually were kind of put together on his request so that we got to know each other and took on certain mannerisms of Chris's as well as he took on some of my mannerisms, I'm sure. I think that was the whole purpose of it. And that was Chris's whole method of acting. He liked to get into especially when he had someone else playing him as a young man, he wanted to make sure we sort of were on the same page.
Chris believed. I mean, it wasn't just a performance, he believed he was Superman. He lived it, and he realized what a wonderful opportunity it was for him, but he didn't take it slightly. You know, I mean, he didn't have any embarrassment about it. You know, he became more than just a part. I mean, I suppose like Sean Connery became James Bond, and always will be. Chris broke away from that Superman image, but he must have known, since he nailed it, he would never be allowed to not be Superman.
Any more at home like you?
Not really, no.
I didn't think so.
Lynn Stallmaster said there's this girl that's in a series called Nichols. He said she'd like to come in and read for this. Margot, and I'm using this expression honestly, tripped into the room. And she just walked in, "Hi, I'm Margot Kidder. Actually, I'm Lois Lane." And, and she went to this whole, and I fell in love with her.
It was, in a way, the easiest character I've ever done. I guess partly because Donner saw the goofy parts of me and threw those into the mix. I guess I was so bad and lazy, I just drew on myself. It was very easy and wasn't very complicated. It is so thrilling at this age to know that everyone loved Lois and thought she was great. And I go, wow, how did I do that? That's kind of amazing. But I certainly, none of us worked alone. What that was true collaboration and truly having a director who guided the ship into the harbor.
I hate that cliche chemistry, but between Donner, Kidder, and Reeve, there was chemistry, and no false notes as far as I'm concerned.
No, that's it, Roth. Put it to bed. Right? What are you standing around here for?
I'm not. I wasn't gonna say it.
Go.
Keenan Wynn was going to play Perry White. He'd been hired, and he arrived at Heathrow Airport 5 days before and had a heart attack and went right to the hospital. We had no Perry White, and we had to shoot in 5 days. We had no other cover set. And we just started to go through things, and Dick had a whole list of possible Perry Whites. We were calling them. If they weren't at home, we never called again. We just kept calling. Jackie Cooper answered the phone for Dick, and Dick said, "Jack, how'd you like to play Perry White?"
We talked a little bit. He made it sound very interesting, and it was like, "We need you now." He says, "I wish you could get on the plane this minute." And because they were in England getting ready to film. And in less than a day, I was on my way. I didn't get a script to read until I got there because I got away so fast. And it was very exciting.
Who better? Cigar chomping, bigger than life, which was the comic book, but had to be real, and he was great. He's a great actor.
The vote must be unanimous, Jor-El. It has therefore now become your decision. You alone will condemn us if you wish, and you alone will be held responsible by me.
Terry had this ambiance of an actor, man. There's nothing that this guy couldn't do. His portrayal of Zod was brilliant. I mean, he just breathed life into Zod and made him believable.
We lived the relationship between Non and Zod, and that was how we got this kind of very tight unit. I used to get Sarah to walk in my steps, you know what I mean? Or I'd have her walk, I'd hold her. And we'd walk in unison, when we were going to the set, I was into auras. I'd just come back from India, so what can I tell you?
When I see the film, I never see Sarah Douglas because it's so far removed, the way I look, but also the way I move. I take on another persona, and Terry was responsible for that. He said to me right from the early days that the three of us need to move together in unison. Something needs to be a bit different about us. And there's a fluidity there.
I just felt to myself, I'm the general. And those bastards have to be subservient to me. And the only way I can make them subservient to me is if they are subservient to me, So I did whatever it took so that off stage they felt I was the general and they were working for me. We were inside the White House and I was called and they were ready and I could hear Jack rapping miles away on the other side of the set, and all the crew were there. And I said, "What's happening?" They said, "We're waiting for Jack." And I thought, why, they're too intimidated to scream at him, And I said, "Jack! You bastard! Get over here!" There was silence, And he had these big shoes to make him look foot taller. He had soles like a geisha, and suddenly I had boom, 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 and everybody was like, and he came and said, sorry, General. Don't do that again. Okay.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, PG. Thank you. This is wonderful. Thank you, Paul. Very good.
Dick decided that he was going to approach this with class, with seriousness. And again, Marlon Brando and famous British actors of the stage playing the parts. It was that choice that changed everything.
Is that any movie you make? You know, is the audience going to buy the illusion you're trying to create for them, no matter what that illusion is? If it's an emotional one, if it's humor, if it's pain, if it's sorrow, if it's making a man fly. And I felt this kind of moral obligation. It was the start of my career, but it was also a big studio, Warner Brothers. And I didn't want to fail them in a strange way, and we didn't. It became, I think, one of their greatest hits of all times.